Coastal restoration is important because we need the protection from the storm, and one of the parts that's often lost is in the lower river. We're actually restoring the area that will protect the river channel, so therefore it impacts the economy of Louisiana, and the river has a $200 billion annual impact on the nation's economy, so it's really a national issue that we work with to try to place material along the river in the lower areas where it's, of course, being eaten up by wave action and subsidence and sea level rise and all the litany of things that we hear about attacking it, or attacking the river channel as well. So through the beneficial use of dredge material and piling material up, we're removing impediments to navigation, and we're using it beneficially to protect the coast, protect the river channel as well.
Coastal restoration is so important because we're losing over 1,600 acres a year. We're losing a football field an hour, and it directly affects our storm protection, which is so important to our coastal residents.
We looked at all of the projects that were planned for Plaquemines Parish, some of them funded, some of them unfunded. And of these 38 projects, when we started running the modeling, we learned that they lowered storm surge to our parish less than a foot. So we knew we had to move in another direction. When we went to Vicksburg and partnered with the Corps to run the modeling, we saw that a mile of marsh grass has less than a foot of storm surge reduction. Yet an 8-foot forested ridge, and it's hard to see the lines on this graph up here, it lowered storm surge over 5 feet. And the lady at the Corps of Engineers made the comment, "This is scary good." So we knew we had a plan that would work, but we had to get it recognized by the Corps of Engineers, and then the biggest challenge was to get FEMA to recognize it. If you look at this picture of a $22 million project, a Barry Island project that was built, and keep your eye on those pilings, 6 months later, that's the project. $22 million gone. I don't think anybody here would invest their money in a project that would be gone in 6 months. And keep remember, that ridge that was pumped before Betsy on South Pass, the only 4 cows out of 2,000 head of cattle to survive Katrina were on that ridge. So it makes a lot of sense to do these ridge projects. And that's why we've altered our plan. This is our original 3-phase plan in Plaquemines Parish. The red is the berms behind the levees. The green is a lot of projects partnered with, and some projects are going on now in that green area, islands and ridges that were once there that are sustainable to lower storm surge to the levees. And then the 3rd phase is the outer Barry Islands that was started with the funds during the BP spill. And the concept of this, if you look in the top left corner, that's an open wave hitting our levees. And if you go to the bottom right corner, you can see with the forested ridge what it does to that water after it passes the ridge. And that first phase, this ridge here, built behind the levees in Plaquemines Parish, will lower storm surge 5 feet to those levees. Now, next month, we will go out for bid for a $50 million project to start this project. We believe when that ridge is built and some small modifications to the Mississippi River levee and the back levee, Venice Boothville will be very close to 100-year protection. But building that ridge, not by raising the levees and widening the base. And that'll be a historical moment for our coastal plan in Plaquemines Parish. Most recently, thanks to the help of the CPRA team and the consultants, we decided and worked to increase the flood protection, not only to Plaquemines, but our neighboring parishes, for 2 reasons. One is the environmental impact of building that ridge right along the levee was too great. Secondly, by turning these ridges out, we can build them on ridges that are right below the surface that'll be more sustainable than just a straight line behind the levees. And third, we believe, and we'll be providing data to the CPRA, to hopefully get these plans accepted into the master plan, because now that the cost benefit of lowering storm surge to other parishes will absolutely make it more beneficial to the whole coast. The first phase will start, like I said, we're going out to bid next month, and it'll be a historical event for Plaquemines Parish. When we went to Washington with this project, we knew unless it was recognized by FEMA, we would not be able to justify using tax dollars in Plaquemines Parish. After about 3 years of working with our senators and congressmen, FEMA sent this, Craig Fugate sent this letter to Congress saying they will now recognize things other than levees and flood walls. And we were celebrating in Plaquemines Parish. We had a plan that lowered storm surge 5 feet, the first phase, and now we have FEMA recognizing it as flood protection. As a matter of fact, when the FEMA came in, and in the area of Jesuit Bend, where the flood maps were going from 2 feet to 9 feet, and FEMA said, well, we're only taking into consideration the federal levees, the 100-year protection. And I pulled this letter out and showed him, and he said, where'd you get this? And 3 months later, they came back, and what we now know as the LAMP program is re-looking at all items of flood protection in 5 parishes. So this letter was very important to us justifying spending tax dollars. We all know about the meeting that the governor and the mayor of Grand Isle, we had with the president to request that he demand that BP pay for the berms. And in this meeting, he sent back to, a team to Louisiana, and thanks to Garrett Graves and the team here, convinced the president to ultimately approve those berms. But the most important thing about those berms, other than keeping the oil out, is that we got the permit for those berms in 19 days. 19 days. That was the largest coastal project ever done in the United States. It moved more material. And my good friend John Lopez accused of us destroying the Gulf. We're going to destroy the ecosystem. Everything bad was going to happen, and it didn't. As a matter of fact, he came out with this article and said, called it the silver lining of the oil spill. So environmentalists do make mistakes and do change their mind. We have got to work as a team to change the permitting process in Washington. We've got to come up with a way where the environmental groups get a seat at the table, but they can't delay these projects indefinitely. You know, we've heard a lot of discussion here today about the BP money and the pots of money coming down. We're going to get enough money to drastically reduce storm surge, protect critical areas along the coast. If we don't change the permitting process, nobody here will live long enough to see that money spent to protect our coastline. The project that we're going out for bid next month, we've been working on that permit for 7 years, back and forth, back and forth. We've got to come up with a plan to set a timeline and some burden of proof on the groups that object to the permits. And if they can't prove why they shouldn't be issued, then the permits need to be issued. And so that's going to be our real challenge moving forward. You know, back in 1996, I believe it was, the dredge industry supported our plan and the berms and the ridges, and we were told we'd never get permitted for these large ridges. And I think we've overcome that and really believe that this is the way to save coastal Louisiana. So I'm going to let PJ comment on the Bud Map program and Cat Island update, and thank you for your time.
Gentlemen, thank you for having us today, and just want to point out some of the articles that have come out on this plan. We've been recognized for doing this coastal plan not only from the local media, but a lot of the national and international magazines like DPC magazine had a great article when we first began the plan, and it was a common sense approach. It was something that that is not, in our opinion, being done in a lot of ways to rebuild the coast. We were also excited this year to actually sign. Last year we began talking and engaging the Corps in the BUDMAT program. And the BUDMAT program is the beneficial use program where we obviously all know that the Corps dredges the Mississippi River every year, taking that material and dumping it out the Outer Continental Shelf. We are partnering with them through an agreement that we have. It was signed by the Colonel and Billy Nungesser on August 6th, and we're looking forward to begin. We just actually had our first meeting last week to begin identifying projects to use this material beneficially rather than waste it by dumping it off the Outer Continental Shelf. My last thing, of course, I don't ever sit up here without talking about Cat Island. I'm probably the closest thing Jerome Zerang has to an ex-wife, and I bitch and complain until I got what I wanted, and thank God he...
Just as expensive, too.
And I was expensive, and I appreciate it. After a meeting that we had with him, he has released $500,000 of the CF funds, so we're very excited. In fact, I believe today we're going to make a selection on that and move this project forward. I can't help but look at this little island, and you see a picture of it there early on. That's now all open water, and I can't help but think that if a foreign country tried to move in and take that piece of property from us, we'd be having battleships and fighter jets flying off our coast at this very moment. But 2 years later, that went to open water, and we lost a valuable island, not only in the land, but what it meant to a lot of the birds, our state bird, as a matter of fact, that nests out there. So we want to thank CPRA for all of their help. You guys have been phenomenal. Hopefully we'll get this project kicked off soon, and if there's any question, we'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
And Jerome, I want to thank you, too, for your efforts on that, and all the oil companies that have stepped up and donated millions for their project. They've been great partners.
Thank you.
PJ and Billy, I want to compliment y'all. I know that I'm one of the, I guess you call it lucky few that gets PJ's updates, whether they be on Facebook or on email, and yours, Billy. And I know that it would have been fairly easy to give up quite a few times on this, but I appreciate your gumption and your drive to get this going. I think you know, instead of sitting waiting for to be included in the master plan, which is obviously a good thing, but you went out and developed your own plan. You've done some things that quite honestly I'm trying to get some of the parishes that I work with to do, because I think I kind of used y'all as an example, and that's not to shortchange anybody else, but I think if you've got your own plan like you have here, and it's well thought, and you put out some of your own money and showed the viability of some of these projects, that it makes it easier, I know, on me as a board member up here to extend additional funds. So I just appreciate your efforts.
I'll echo a little bit what Steve is saying. You know, Reggie's here today, and I think Mr. Dupree is that model has been praised and recognized over and over again in terms of taking matters into not necessarily your own hands, but leading the charge with the partnerships. And so, again, Billy, the idea of following that model and moving projects along outside of the bureaucratic delays that we all know exist and continue to try to work through and work within. I particularly want to point out what's exciting is the beneficial use agreement. And if you can come back and give us a little bit of an update on how that goes, to me that's one of the most significant parts or components of your report, because every parish in the coastal area of Louisiana has been dying to get their hands on the beneficial use material. So please let us know how that goes. That's an important part of it. If I can ask you, I know that recently there's been a move to partner with the coastal zone activity with Plaquemines and St. Bernard. Can you guys give us any brief update about that?
There's a project with Woody Gagliano that extends from the parish line into Plaquemines into St. Bernard, and we offered to put up our share of the money to partner to move that project forward, as we hope that will lead to partnerships both with Jefferson and St. Bernard. You know, we continue, and Jerome, we've talked about this for years, we continue to put that pipe in and take it out. So what we'd like to do is we've identified about 12 spots that we can put a pipe in, a sleeve, leave it, so we're not taking that pipe in and out after every project. And also, you know, we're going out for $50 million worth of dredge material next month. I look forward to the day when we've got 20 projects lined up and we long-term lease a dredge, because we actually got this group to study that, and leasing a dredge for 3 to 5 years would cut a substantial amount of cost down, and where we could go and get all these projects shovel-ready and work across parish lines to work together to pump one project after another and get more cost benefit out of it. But I think this will be a great project, partnering with St. Bernard, and where we see it benefit both parishes across parish lines.
Compliment y'all on number one, assessing what's around. You brought a local gentleman who had experience in the area, an area that survived a lot of hurricanes, and you tried to replicate it. There's a lot of local knowledge out there that we don't use, but taking the lead and then having to go through the process of getting the technical people. How much money did you spend showing what that ridge did? Engineering study.
It took us about $1.5 million partnering with the Corps in Vicksburg working on it, and then we brought in some experts when we went to Washington and met with FEMA, and we got lucky. Nancy Ward was the acting director. Craig Fugate was not in place yet, and she was a regional director that actually understood some of the data we were providing. So we got her to let us make presentations to the FEMA team up there. And so when Craig Fugate got into his position, the knowledge was already there. So we got lucky in getting someone that actually had done the work and understand what storm surge does and how it's lowered before it hits the levee. But it took 3 years working through our congressional delegation with FEMA, 3.5 years, to get them to recognize the data we got from the Corps and brought to Washington. So it was a long process, but in the end, it's going to pay off.
But at the end, with all the studies, was there any difference in what y'all believed before you started that trip in convincing the federal government and what you ended up after all of the money and time and computer models?
No, it actually, we were, even the Corps, I quote the lady in Vicksburg, when we did the modeling and showed what those ridges did, her comment was, "This is scary good." And it was greater than we thought. It went from like 5 to 8 foot of storm surge reduction. We stayed with the 5 feet because we didn't want to get into a battle of some different storm surge models. But it actually had a greater impact than we thought. And thanks to a lot of the team working with CPRA, when we recently turned those ridges out from the levees, we found out it not only lowers storm surge more to Plaquemines, but also to Jefferson, St. Bernard, and other neighboring parishes. About 86% of the storms that affect coastal Louisiana cross Plaquemines Parish first. So this plan moving forward, the 3 phases, and the 3rd phase is the Outer Barrier Islands that we pumped 6 feet during the oil spill, and we hope to go back and add to that and add rocks to protect and save it and see vegetation grow out there. But you know, the permitting process is going to have to move quickly. That's our next big challenge.
The other point, but then going back, Joseph Hayter did some computer models way back 20 years ago that basically reflected the same thing. I mean, it's really frustrating to have to go over all this stuff, spend all that extra money with knowledge that we already have.
And Wendell, we just sent Dr. Saheda to meet with Pat Brister in looking at doing a concept at the mouth of the lake with some kind of S channel. And if you build those berms high enough, wide enough, Mississippi's never going to let you build a floodgate. But you build natural berms out there. Dr. Saheda believes we can lower storm surge to the whole North Shore 5 to 10 feet, because by the time the storm covers those berms, it's gone and past. It'll limit that flow into the lake and be a huge storm surge reduction for the North Shore. So she's working with Dr. Saheda now using some of our data to implement something that may work for the North Shore.
And also the beneficial use, it's something we've been kicking around, I know from my friends with coastal management since the beginning. That waste, It appears to me that just a little bit of thinking, in y'all discussions, it's taking that off the continental shelf, taking some of that material. Was there any discussion of just going a shorter distance, not building anything, but just dropping it in a place that the currents could take it and bring it back into the system? That was basically how the whole system was built up. Was that discussion in there? And some of y'all,
Not in the Bud Map program. It's taking it from the river and building land, and that's the plan. But there was some discussions with Dr. Saheda in the meetings about where we could put that material to where it would benefit the coastline and be drawn left or right along the river.
Yeah, well, my point is that if you don't have to, you have to just dump the stuff and let nature do what it's going to do.
Take and move it.
Where I do not see the extra cost, and that's what in that discussion.
Well, I think this Bud Map is going to be, it's $10 million next year. I think this is a great move forward. And now we can go to Congress and say, let's spend all this money instead of throwing it offshore and use it beneficial. And part of it can be depositing that material in areas where the natural current will take it and build back some of that coastline.
Exactly. And one other comment, what y'all said originally, look, most hurricanes come from the southeast going northwest. I guarantee you the amount of water that ends up against the ridges in Lafourche are knocked down tremendously by Plaquemines existing, and we support all of the work that y'all do. Again, take that energy from reaching, and everybody around the Barataria Basin benefits from Plaquemines being out there and taking most of that surge.
Thank you. You're hung up on common sense, by the way. You gotta get off of that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It ain't that common.
Thank you.
First off, I'd like to come. I'm George Ricks, President of Save Louisiana Coalition. I'd like to commend President Nungesser and PJ. Since I've been coming to all of these CPRA meetings, since I've been president of this organization over a year ago, I started this organization. This is the most common sense plan I've seen in Plaquemines Parish presented, and I hope you, ladies and gentlemen, took heed as to what they presented. We talk about how much money is being spent on the studies of diversions, and we know what we're seeing. It's not going to build a land that we presumed is going to build. I think President Nungesser said it took them $1.5 million to study. How much money are we spending on study of diversions? I mean, the CPRA gave the Water Institute of the Gulf $30 million to study diversions. It's just allocated $37.9 million to study in the legislature this year to study diversions again. These projects with President Nungesser and PJ is the way to go. I mean, it may, like Mr. Curo said, it's common sense. Common sense. The storms come from the south in. We need our protection starting outside in, not from the inside out. The diversions, Myrtle Grove, I think it was estimated the first implementation of $275 million. What could we do with projects like President Nungesser and those proposed with $275 million? And one other thing, you can't build ridges with diversions. And they showed you how much storm surge can be built, can be prevented with ridges and terracing projects like Mr. Curo and those introduced. I hope y'all take heed to these kind of projects, and this is the way we have to go. It makes common sense. When I first started this organization, I had a fisherman come up to me and said, the state can't balance a checkbook, but they're going to try to build land with water. I mean, think about it. Ms. Gautreaux, you took a tour, the diversion subcommittee took a tour of Carnarvon recently, and I was told by some of the captains on airboats that they were instructed to take you only to the Big Maw, where 344 acres since 1998 was built by the diversion. I am offering, as a licensed captain, I'm going to make an offer, and I will get boats to take you all on a tour of the 47 square miles that were lost because of the Carnarvon diversion after Katrina. I'm publicly offering you that at no charge to the state or to the CPRA, my gas, my nickel, to take y'all and show you the real story. Thank you very much.
What is Save Louisiana Coalition?
We're a nonprofit organization. We are primarily involved in the responsible restoration of the coast, and we represent the fishing and seafood industries.
What is your opinion of Plaquemines Parish plan?
It's the first most common sense approach I've seen since I've been coming to all the CPRA meetings. It's what we need to do. The CPRA and the state needs to get away from the diversion issues, spending all this money on studies and engineering of diversions that'll take 30, 40 years to work and will not offer any storm protection immediately. Plaquemines Parish, I commend President Nungesser and PJ for this plan. It's the most comprehensive approach I've seen so far.
We really work a lot with Plaquemines Parish. I mean, simply proximity is they're the lowest in the lower river. So when we look at the lower channel area, we're really concerned about. I think their plan shows a lot of effort, and it shows things that we've learned through years of working at the ridges that they're talking about, the bud mat plan. That's a great deal where material's taken out of the river, so there's a benefit to navigation, a benefit to keeping the channel open and maintaining the channel, and then beneficially placing material. And there are impediments in places of elevation that you can pump the material. Their ideas of going higher show the common sense approach of things that lessons have been learned where we've been able to place material higher. We see nesting birds, migratory birds, and land animals actually using that material versus maintaining marsh, which their study and information shows that it doesn't do as much as an elevated platform, the ridges, and restoring those ridges. And hopefully we can use more material out of the river. There's efforts to deepen the river. This all marries into that. All restoration, the more material we can use beneficially, the more protection we get, and not only of our infrastructure and port facilities, but of the navigation channel.
What are some of the highlights of the plan that you think are most effective?
The ridge building. I mean, it makes common sense. Like they said, the common sense approach. The storms come in from the south to the north. This diversion that they want to build won't build any land for 30 or 40 years, and then they won't be able to build ridges that knock down storm protection.
How does Plaquemines' approach compare to other parishes' approach?
All I can say is we work more with Plaquemines. I think it's mainly the proximity, but I think in many ways they've kind of established a model that we'd like to see in other areas as diversions look at other parishes, as diversions come up the river. I think that will be a time when those efforts are driven to interact more with navigation and to look at issues in those areas. But I think Plaquemines, because they're down there in front center stage in the Gulf of Mexico, and every storm that comes in seems to impact them in some way. So because of that, they've been driven. They're also suffering a lot more in many ways coastal land loss. So as they're down there at the forefront of land loss and trying to fight it, they've kind of stepped to the forefront. But I do believe we'll see that more. Of course, I represent the river. There, of course, are other folks on the Atchafalaya that do the same type of work, and I know that some of those parish efforts are led. I know Jefferson does some stuff too, and that also Lake Charles with the Calcasieu does a lot of work as well. But for us on the Mississippi River, it really does. The river starts with Plaquemines for us.
I'm tickled to death that Plaquemines has come up with this plan, and we've been working with Plaquemines Parish in the last few months on another issue of permanent sediment pipelines to pump sediment in and build land. Right now, the way they do these dredging operations, most of the project cost is mobbing and demobbing the pipelines. They have to pick up the pipe and put it down. We want a system of permanent sediment trunk pipelines in different strategic points along the river and pump sediment in from the river and leave these pipes permanently in the wetlands.
We're excited about the bud mat and the beneficial use. I know recently we got some information from the Corps that shows since 2002 through the beneficial use of material from the navigation maintenance budget, they've created over 3,500 acres of land in the lower river. And sometimes when we talk about coastal restoration, the positive impact of navigation and the Corps is left out. And that 3,500 acres speaks volumes to the success we've had with doing so.